It should come as no surprise that Robo's world Zarnok Fortress draws inspiration from a number of other games. I don't think it's a terrible assumption to say that most games draw such inspiration, so I figured I may as well be upfront about the sources of my inspiration, and talk a bit about what I'm drawing from, what I'm leaving untouched, and how I plan on blending the different elements. Mega Man ZX. Let's get the most obvious inspiration out of the way first. Mega Man ZX is probably the most significant inspiration for Robo's world, the Zarnok Fortress, in terms of moment-to-moment gameplay. Both games are 2D action platform games, where you have a laser, jump, and dash ability. Believe it or not, this is the only Mega Man game I've ever played, so my design is not inspired by the X series or the classic numbered games directly, as I've only seen videos of those games. Notably, Zarnok Fortress does not feature player progression. When I decided on the speed-oriented nature of the game, it didn't make sense to limit the player's abilities, which is why you have all of them from the start. This ensured that the player would always be equipped to handle any challenge the game threw at them, and it would become a matter of mastery to actually get better at the game. That said, rather than getting an ability from a robot master that gave players some leg up on a different level of the game, instead I opted to influence the very obstacles in the game, altering the challenge based on which zones the player had sabotaged, contributing to an overall risk-reward mechanic and making your actions in the world feel like they have real meaning. Hero Core. This indie title by Daniel Remar is another significant inspiration for Zarnok Fortress. In Mega Man games, you pick which order you want to tackle the bosses, but in Hero Core, you tackle bosses you're not the proper level for by finding them in a large, open, interconnected world of single-screen challenges. This is the main concept I wanted to replicate in Zarnok Fortress, the idea of exploring a large world to find your way to particular objectives. The Legend of Zelda series. This particularly influenced the Fortress and the digital environment. As it states on the Kickstarter, Zarnok Fortress is Mega Man cross Majora's Mask. The idea of a large, overarching threat the player must overcome under a time limit is the main parallel here, the Fortress taking the place of the moon from Majora's Mask. Most recently, I played The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds, and was taken by surprise at the difficulty spike that occurred when entering the Dark World. While I liked the ability to freely choose which temple I tackled, I was annoyed that tackling them in a specific order was clearly advantageous. For instance, both the Light and Dark Worlds are littered with large boulders that I knew hid items beneath them, but by chance the dungeon that contained the Titan's Mitt, the item you needed to lift said rocks, was in one of the last ones I visited, thus meaning that I had to backtrack across the world to all the areas I'd seen those boulders to claim the rewards beneath them, and I probably missed a lot. Don't be confused, I like the mechanic in Legend of Zelda games where you see a crack in a wall and know it's something you'll need to come back later to bomb, but that's because those are well placed and you know how far you have to go between when you get the bombs and how many of those instances you'll have to remember and come back to. What's frustrating about the Titan's Mitt scenario is that's an unnecessary backtracking created by getting it arbitrarily towards the end of the game, in my case. I resolved to handle the open-ended nature of Zarnok Fortress differently, using adaptive enemy AI to smooth the difficulty curve, as the player navigated a world where they choose their own objective. The digital environment was planned to exist as a non-combat game of cat-and-mouse, fast travel system right from the beginning. That's why the original DM03 features the ammo scramble minigame. And as it turns out, in Skyward Sword, which came out years after I designed the digital environment, there are actually a few segments known as the Silent Realms, where you're stripped of your weapons, must traverse a tranquil but dangerous place and stay out of sight of watchful guardians, while collecting a series of items towards some useful end. In Zarnok Fortress, you must similarly navigate the digital environment and destroy bits of enemy AI to lower their intelligence. Perhaps there is a bit of Pac-Man DNA here too, but we'll call that ancestral to both games. So yeah, I'm claiming credit for coming up with this before Skyward Sword, and I've got dated artwork to prove it. Just reassuring you that there are at least some of the ideas that I've come up with in this game that are my own, however similar they may appear to other mechanics that have come out since. Halo. This really influenced the enemy classes, elites, and the grenades. Also known as the only first-person shooter I play, and the reason I got an Xbox. This space opera grabbed me in a way that other popular sci-fi franchises somehow didn't. The idea of having fewer, more refined enemies that were usable in multiple scenarios, instead of a large number of enemies that only appeared once, and had a single strategy to defeating them, that came from Halo. That's also the reason that the highest ranked enemies are called elites, after the main antagonists of several of the Halo titles. And of course, this is where the idea of sticky grenades came from, although in Zarnok Fortress, they're magnetic. Bam. Unique. Portal. Hard light, crushers, and speedrunning. Zarnok Fortress balances quick-paced platforming and combat with some obstacles that are a little more cerebral to ensure there's a nice variety of play experiences. These are certainly informed by Portal, but perhaps the most direct connection are the crushers and hard light. While both of these elements share visual similarities to their Portal counterparts, both were designed before they were even appeared for the first time in the Portal 2 trailer. Crushers didn't appear in the DEM-03, but the one-way barriers do. It was only when I wanted the flexibility of having these one-way barriers to appear and disappear that I redesigned them as hard light. Incidental though it may seem, I was also inspired to orient Zarnok Fortress towards a speedrunner-friendly perspective when I saw a gameplay video of Portal being completed in about 10 minutes. While that video exploited glitches to accomplish the goal, I set out to design Zarnok Fortress to require some skill to complete within the minimal time frame. Shovel Knight. As much as I loved Shovel Knight, it directly inspired to remove any one-hit kill obstacles such as spikes or the idea of an instant death pit. Again, I'd like to clarify, I'm not against the design principle of instant death obstacles. That's, in fact, the main idea behind the digital environment. What makes them frustrating in Shovel Knight is that you have a life meter, and it feels odd that, while most times you simply take damage, it's in these particular cases that you die in one single hit. I don't mean to pick on Shovel Knight since I know this trope exists in endless number of games, such as Mega Man. It just has to take the blame since it's the game I completed most recently that features instant death. Robo's World, The Blue Light Rocks. Compact Mode. The original DEM-03 didn't allow Robo to use the compact ability that he possessed in the previous game. I designed Compact Mode so many years ago that I can't honestly remember its origin or think of another game that takes this particular approach to crouching. While Compact Mode no longer makes you invulnerable as it did in the Blue Light Rocks, it does reduce explosive damage and now makes Robo significantly shorter and able to fit under low-hanging ceilings. So yes, there are many things in Zarnok Fortress that have been quote-unquote done before, and some mechanics or design decisions that might have been easier to call out than others. But it's the blend of all these mechanics into the living world of the Fortress that makes this game different, if not wholly unique. If nothing else, I hope you at least find it well-executed, well-constructed amalgamation of mechanics, levels, and gameplay. And most importantly, I hope you find it fun.